left right out. I mean, if you were on YouTube and you happened to see you probably didn't see my video on what was going on with the market the other day, because then they took it down for other aspects in the video. But today, if you're looking at the market, I mean, it's popping after yesterday's little bit of a sell-off. But these are all, I mean, relative percentage-wise, these are not big moves in the market, really. They're getting bigger than they were because we were like so complacent about just everything had to go up. Everything was going up. You're starting to see that 10-year yield sitting at 1.8, and now safely in that 1.8 range now. In anticipation for the Fed to, even possibly do that half a point rate hike in March. What they call I think Bill Ackman is calling like a surprise, shock and awe. It's like a half a point rate hike when the CPI is at 7 something. That's not shock and awe. That's a little whimper. Granted, it's more than 0.25. And all it will do is send short-term ramifications in the market. You're going to start cracking it. Like I said, I think at best the Fed can get to 1.5% before they really, throw a wrench in this whole operation. I don't even think they'll get there, but 1.5% is like my absolute top until the market just starts losing its complete wheels. But yeah, who thought? These are who would have thought these moves would have happened in the 10 years? These are astronomical moves that go from since the beginning of the year, 1.5, roughly 1.5% to 1.8. That's incredible moves in the treasuries. Of course, we are seeing over the last few years, we've seen a lot of incredible moves just because there is, when you axe the Fed out of that market, it's a lot more illiquid than it used to be, in my opinion. I don't think there's a lot of private individuals. Now, for some reason, there's still foreigners now. They're still buying. I don't know if they just don't know what to do with all the dollars that they've accumulated over the years, because that's what's happening. We've exported most of our inflation in the beginning of this. So, over the last 20 years, we've exported it out to other nations. That's one of the reasons we didn't have all the rising costs, because we were able to send those dollars out and get goods. So now we're getting into the point where things are transitioning to where, hey, you're a foreign nation. Hey, we have all these U.S. dollars. What are we going to do with them? Well, you could recycle them in the treasury market, I guess, and lose a little bit of money due to depreciation. Typically, you can go out in the oil markets and be able to buy oil or go into the technology sector and be able to get assets or things that you want. What you're going to do with your dollars. Now, not so much. So what are they going to do with it? Well, you can have them come in. They were also coming into the real estate market. So, but what do you do with them now? So that's the other thing. It's like they're more likely, they either held dollars or treasury securities are more likely to be selling. But for some reason, they're still buying. There's a lot more net buying of foreigners for some reason, even with the latest inflation data. But I think that'll change. I think they'll start wising up. And we'll see, because the Fed wants to they want to sell treasuries. That's their overall goal. Well, good luck with that. So if everybody's selling treasuries, what's going to happen? It doesn't take a rocket science to figure that one out. But apparently for Joe Biden, it does. I mean, we look at last night, which was one of the most painful things to watch, because I haven't really paid attention to Joe Biden all that much when it comes to his cognitive abilities, or just listening to his speeches, just little excerpts. But yesterday I actually listened to his, 1 year, which is hard to believe that we've only done a year with this guy, but 1 year, whatever, press conference. Watching that speech yesterday, or the conference, with all the reporters asking Biden questions. One, they're, pretty softballish questions, but the guy, it's not, we're used to people spinning things, to achieve, to whatever various agendas they have, but they do it kind of like almost it's very, very calculated and well thought out. Well, his cognitive abilities, I cannot follow his train of thought. I don't understand what he's saying. It's completely off the wall. And one of the biggest faux pas, I won't even talk about the economic issues or what he calls his report card, or, citing Nobel Prize winning economists, or whatever the case may be, or something about Nobel Prize winning economists, and how, which is like an oxymoron, to be honest, if we're really going to talk about science. But if you have that, I look at it the exact opposite. The more economists you have on your side, the more you should do the opposite at this point, especially the mainstream ones. But okay, let's go to probably the most biggest faux pas he had, the worst thing he could possibly do from a foreign policy perspective, which we know, like from Afghanistan, which is one of the greatest blunders of American foreign policy history. He was talking about Ukraine and Russia, and what do you do if Russia was to invade, and what he's doing to stop it. And like, he was all over the place. In fact, he said some things, and I wish I had it off the top of my head, that I was like, whoa. So pretty much, even if I'm reading it this way, what is Putin reading it as? Pretty much, you're saying you're going to do nothing if Putin does this. And then some of it was like, well, if they want to do anything with dollar-denominated assets, if they 45% of their economy is based off exporting the oil and gas to Europe, which I don't know if that's true, but I know it is a significant part. And I was thinking to myself, well, how much of Europe's oil and gas, now that we cannot export, or now that we're not exporting our LNG and our gas to them, because when Trump was in, it was like we were ready to export to Europe. We were begging Europe, hey, we'll take that burden off you so you're not beholden to the Russians. So my thought was, from a tactical perspective, is like, well, yeah, I guess they could cut off Russia's checkbook by doing that, but then they're cutting themselves in they're stabbing themselves in the back or in the front or whatever you want to call it. They're killing themselves because they are so reliant on that natural gas and that oil from that Eastern Bloc. They need it. Europe needs them more than they need Europe at this point for energy reasons, and especially in the heat of winter, or the middle of winter, they need them. Russia could, last by cutting Europe off and selling elsewhere. So Biden's statement was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard on foreign policy. That's kind of hyperbolic, but it is one of the most ridiculous statements I've heard. And to say that somehow is going to stop Russia from invading Europe, or not Europe, invading Ukraine, is somehow Europe's going to be able to not use any of their oil and gas and hurt them, I think was it's stupid. It shows you the arrogance that Western leaders have, and how they think that their house is a castle, when in reality it's just they're paper tigers. I mean, our whole house is built on a really horrible economic foundation, and to think that we can do that to the Russians. Russians have been stockpiling gold. They have been diversifying their economic situation. They have been signing contracts, obviously, with other nations outside the Western nations. We're talking about they're doing a lot more business with China, and Iran's been a longtime ally, but Middle Eastern countries, and they are starting to try to get off dollar reliance in the West. But to me, one of the big reasons why you would even let such a large portion of your oil and gas, or your economic situation in the oil and gas industry, be so beholden to Europe, is almost like from a tactical perspective from Russia, is that you can just turn switch pretty much and cut their energy supplies off. And what are they going to do? Well, when Trump was in, when we were drilling significantly, when we had an excess amount of oil, we were independent, and we could actually export. The Europeans, that was when you could actually say, well, the Europeans could just stop using Russian oil, and we can really hurt them, because we were right there ready to supply Europe with oil and nat gas. That's not the case now. So now Europe is more reliant on Russia. So that was stupid. And some of the other statements he said alluded to the fact that they would not do anything. Wow, he's given them $600 million in advanced weaponry. Well, we've been over in Ukraine training their guys, and we didn't stop them when they went to Crimea. That's kind of when we really stepped in and started training some of their guys right after that Crimea thing. And but that's not going to help Ukraine, because logistically they just don't have it. You can give them as much weapons as they want. Their army sucks. Their Marine Corps, which there's only vestiges of their Marines left. Their Marines are pretty awesome. But since they took Crimea, that cut off their Marines to pretty much, that's where they were stationed at, and half the service members, because a lot of their families got cut behind the lines. And it's like, well, what are you going to do? Fight with the chance that the Russians will use your family against you? So it's pretty interesting dynamics over there. but the Ukrainian army is very sketch. They're sketchy, so they'll fold. He said, "Oh, there's going to be a really high burden of life." I actually think the Russians, tactically, that's not real high on the priority list, but militarily, I think they could just sweep through there real quick, at least get to Kiev, or maybe from the north you come through and get to Lviv and take that over, and then there's nothing left. You can just take the rest of the country. So good luck. I don't think there's anything stopping Russia from this at this point. Uh, Least of which us or the Europeans have any leg to stand on militarily, or even in the we have the capabilities, but where would it put us in regards to other aspects when we're trying to deal with China as well? It would We do not have the capability of sustaining that war, or combating Russia uh, militarily right there, and then also having to pivot on the Pacific if China wants to do something with Taiwan. So it's a very precarious situation. I think if you have to pick one or the other, which we do right now, because of I mean, it's not money wise, but a decimation of our military morale and some other aspects within there, I would have to pick Taiwan over Ukraine. Ukraine is just you're tripping over dimes over there. So it's just not even it's not worth it. They're going to take it. Might as well just Biden already alluded what they're going to let them. I mean, because their economic sanctions are going to do diddly against the Russians at this point. So essentially, he gave the green light to Putin just to roll right in there if he feels like it. Um, and from us tactically, you got to look at more of protecting Taiwan over Ukraine. I mean, Taiwan, we've got more ties to that area or that space, and I think we have more obligations to them. We have more economic ties to them, and in that, if Taiwan goes around there, that's another tactical spot for the Chinese to operate in that region, and it's one of the last I guess we call free market areas. Or well, there's other places around there, but for like domestic or production that we use domestically, for especially like semiconductors and chip manufacturing, Taiwan's vastly more significant than Ukraine. Not that Ukraine, I mean, could be a oil and gas haven there. I'm sure there's a lot of exploration it could happen there, but Taiwan, definitely right now we are reliant on them for so much of what we use in everyday life. So we have to pivot that way because our military is not ready to deal with Russian and Chinese front, or Russian Chinese altercation on multiple fronts. We just couldn't do that because one, you can't relate it back to World War II or anything, because right now we're so technologically advanced. It would happen very swiftly. We'd have massive casualties and massive equipment losses, and we just don't have the ability to ramp up production to even sustain any kind of ground combat we would have with the Russians, any kind of like naval altercations, especially with their hypersonic missiles. I don't know what we do, but I say we pivot to Taiwan. Biden has pretty much alluded to that. Maybe not even go to Taiwan, but just alluded that, hey, that they can come in there. Anyway, I got off the sidetrack, but yeah, his press conference was a complete disaster, in my opinion. I don't know how this man is in office and how he represents us as a nation. I don't even care. I'm not concerned about his party affiliation. At least Obama, I didn't like him, and he did some, obviously some legal things, and there's a lot of scandals. But when he presented himself before the nation or before the world, he was at least cognizant of just things around him, and his ability to actually articulate things was vastly superior to Biden's. And I'll even take Trump over that. I mean, I'd rather have somebody that is witty and willing to put down people and talk off the cuff, and at least you get that sense of a command presence and a sense that the man has a grasp of reality, whether you disagree with him or agree with the way he approaches it. I would take anything over this at this point, besides essentially we have authoritarianism by the oligarchy, and then a fascistic state through corporate cooperation with government entities with regard to ideology. So I guess we already I was going to say, besides an authoritarian, but I guess we already kind of live in that realm right now. Anyway, YouTube censors a lot of things. You can't. It's no longer a platform. Like I said, I believe they're operating it as agents in lieu of the state. Um, but Rumble, I'll be putting a lot more things on Rumble, and I'll probably go into a lot more of the thing that's been troubling us for the last 2 years on Rumble, because I've known a lot about it, and I really haven't been pivoting towards Rumble on that. And I should have, because you can put a lot more information out there. Um, but a lot of this information's out now mainstream, so it's good. Rumble should be a good place to put a lot of this. But anyway, I will talk to you later. Peace.